Hello and welcome to Error Pages. Let's talk about this a little bit. Actually, but before I do this, hit me with some of your questions about error handling, how to display errors, that kind of stuff, and we can maybe build a little bit around that. What's in your mind?
This is I guess it's a little specific to this project,
Uh
but
huh.
what error pages are we like linking to a brand new page or just appending an error to the existing page?
Is it a new page or a message? Other questions about error pages, error handling, that kind of stuff.
Um, Maybe I feel like it's the stupid questions. I feel like I know the answer, but when do we need an error page? Do we need to put it on every HTML file? Or
That is not a stupid question. That is like a very difficult question, actually. When do you need an error page? Because not everything is the same kind of error. And there are certain kinds of errors that you should just try to not have in your code to begin with. And there's other kinds of errors that you can't control. And so you need like a visible way to handle it. Uh, Nobody asked for this, but you should. Um, how to clear an error. Other questions about errors?
How do we detect an error?
Sure. Okay, this is a pretty good place to start. And actually, I want to start with that first one, detecting errors. So let's talk about the three kinds of errors that exist in programming. This isn't even just like a Pokemon uh, uh, inventory or whatever thing. This is throughout software. There's three different kinds of errors. First one is called a compile time error. So a compile time error is your code won't even run. So things that are compile time errors. Syntax. If your browser tries to run your JavaScript file and like you're missing curly braces on your object, as it's trying to parse through that file, it goes, I have no idea what I give up. None of your code ever actually runs. That's a syntax error. So we call those compile time errors. When we start doing TypeScript, we can also add types into type errors into this. So if it is possible in your code to use a string where something is expecting a number, your code will immediately throw an error. You'll see it in your text editor. It won't even compile. Won't run. And these are good. We like compile time errors. That's like really fast feedback on something that isn't going to work. Next up from that, runtime errors. A runtime error is the code compiled, it is in the process of running, and something that happened while it was running made it break. So some examples of runtime errors. Array index out of bounds. If you have an array with 3 things in it and you try to get the 15th index, that's a runtime error. You can't see that ahead of time. It doesn't know until it's actually going through a real list and is trying to get that real list's 15th element that doesn't exist. That crashes your code. Those are worse because your text editor doesn't tell you about those ahead of time. You don't know that they happen until somebody uses your code, hopefully you, maybe one of your actual users, and then something breaks. So anytime you're navigating around on a site and you click something and all of a sudden the site falls apart, that's a runtime error. These are bad, especially compared to compile time errors, because they're way more expensive to fix. It's always a high stress situation because there's real people using your real shitty app. And so there's always a ton of pressure to just slap stuff on there and fix it. So anytime, any runtime error that we can make a compile time error, linting kind of does that. Type errors kind of do that. So that's part of the advantage there. Third kind of error is a logic error. Logic errors are, the code doesn't break. Like at no point does like the app fall apart or whatever. It is just not giving you what you think it should be giving you. So these are things like how it's persisting those responses in the questions. When in the current unit, when you go from this component to this component to this component and it keeps the stuff, that's not a broken app, but it's not what I intended it to do. That's a logic error. Or if you have a calculator, you're doing the DOM calculator and 1 + 1 = 3. That's not broken. It's just not what you want. It's what you didn't intend. So logic errors are the worst of all because the computer can't even help you with them. It can't tell you that something's wrong because the wrongness exists in the human domain, not in the computer domain. It is doing exactly the logic that you told it to do, and it can do that without breaking, but computers aren't smart. They're dumb as hell. It's literally a rock that we tricked into thinking. So it doesn't know that 1 + 1 shouldn't equal 3 unless you tell it otherwise. So these are the worst of all. All right, so there's our range of errors. For error handling, you don't need to do error handling for compile time errors. That's the compiler's job. It's figuring out that your syntax is busted. It's figuring out that like the types are wrong. So there's no need to try catch or do anything like that. We don't need to handle any errors there. Logic errors also can't help you because like if you knew enough to know that your logic was wrong, you would know enough to just fix that. You wouldn't have to write error handling for it. So runtime errors are the only thing that we really need to explicitly handle errors on. So some other things that can be runtime errors that we might want to check. Bad network request. That doesn't have anything to do with our code. If the Poke API goes down, that's not my fault. But if my app is using it, I need to know what my app should do if it can't get a response back from that website. That's something we need to handle errors on. Another one, anything that involves user input. Users can put whatever they want on your page. What do you do if it's something that would break your app? Like, for example, your database has only stores names up to 255 characters. What happens if a user tries to submit a name that's 256 characters? So we got to have some way to handle that. Anytime you're like combining user input with stuff that you have, that's an opportunity for something to go wrong. Anytime something is being parsed, so like parsing those network response might come back okay. They might have changed the format. What should you do if you were expecting JSON to come back, but it accidentally got XML instead? We need to handle that case. All of those are errors, and that's when we want to have like explicit error handling. Questions about any of that? Cool. So that's where we're looking for errors, and that's when we need them. Okay, so let's talk about these other two. New page versus a message. So this is a user experience question. Sometimes it makes sense to go to a new page. Sometimes it makes sense to just show a little message right there. So examples of these. If you're trying to access a page that doesn't exist, you might want the application to catch that and then send you to a different page that tells you, oh, by the way, there's nothing actually here. Because otherwise, what are they going to do? They can't show you the page that you were requesting that didn't exist and put the error there. So that might be a good case for, nope, just redirect them to a 404 page. There's actually like a pretty cool, they're really good opportunities to do cool things. So like GitHub's error pages are really cool. So if I go to my GitHub and then just some random stuff, can't have illegal characters in it. So some repo that doesn't exist, I get this 404 page, but check it out. When you move your mouse around, all those things, the guys all move. I don't know if you picked up on that. And there's even companies that kind of make an art out of 404 page. The greatest one of all time, I think, is the Financial Times 404 page. Can it? Let's see if I can make it happen. All right, so if I go to the Financial Times and go to some non-existent page, there we go. Here's their 404. Like, I absolutely love this one. I'm an economics dork. So 404, good example of just doing a redirect. And so the way that you do a redirect in regular browser JavaScript is actually pretty easy. So this was from the last lesson. Let's just do another one. If I fetch, actually, just realized what I want to do. I'm going to go to one of my Pokemon things that I have already. Cool. Let's do change the Pokemon with error handling. Okay, so this one is cool. So like we see this thing right here. And if I change this to Bulbasaur, turns into Bulbasaur. Awesome. So what if I get some kind of error here? Like I turn this into Bulbasaur. Cool, so I get that. If I wanted to do a redirect, what I could do is make a 404 page. There's nothing special about calling it 404.html, by the way. It could be called anything. Okay, so I have like a generic 404 handler here. So what I want is whenever this catch handler happens, instead of show error, we're going to call this redirect. And what we want to do is window.location.href equals whatever the thing is. So if I do 404.html there and save, hey, it took me to my 404 page. I try to go back to the original broken page, redirects me there. That's it. That's how redirects work. Questions about any of that?
So GitHub was able to embed their 404 page onto like kind of that general area where you were. Would you be able to do something similar here pretty easily?
Yes. In fact, that's kind of what I was doing with the other one, but that wasn't what GitHub was doing. Let's take a look at it. GitHub, Kyle Coberly, ASDF. Now, what it did is it didn't change the URL. This is a totally different page, though. Doesn't have anything to do with any other thing. Now, GitHub is also like an app, and so there's some more complicated ways because like it's a single page app. Well, actually, that's not all the way true. It's mostly a Rails app, but like the fact that this header is here on every page, and if I go over here, that doesn't go away. But see how it's like loading all of that up? That's a fresh HTTP request. It just uses the same content and the same styling and stuff. But otherwise, this is an independent page.
I see, my mistake.
No, like they want you to think that that's what's happening because that's a way cleaner user experience. But I will show you how to kind of do that in place also. Any other questions about redirecting or any of the other stuff we've talked about so far? Cool. Let's look at how else we could do that. Let's go back to this show error example. So if instead of redirecting on error, if I show error, okay, so that's just putting whatever error I got back from the browser on that. That's probably not that great. So I could do a couple things. I could dress that up. I could put some, what in the UX business we call happy talk in there. Say, so sorry, hon, you had the following error. Or like, how is this helpful to a user? Like, what do they give a shit that like your browser couldn't JSON parse the response? Did that mean anything to you 7 weeks ago? So what you could do instead is, so sorry, hon. Something unexpected happened. And then you could also just log the error so that somebody who wanted to know what was up can see it. Hey, where have I seen that before? And meanwhile, over here, I've got that. And if I'm debugging with a user, I can go, by the way, open up, press the following keys, then copy and paste the thing that you see in red over to me. Something like that. Or maybe that's exposing too much about the infrastructure of your site, and you're worried that a hacker is going to use that to like detect vulnerabilities. So nope, get rid of it altogether. All pretty valid ways to do that. And then what's happening in the HTML for this? I just have this empty thing over here. And then anytime there's an error, I set the text content of it. I could also do something like, by default, the thing with the error ID is hidden. And whenever this error happens, I could either do it directly, which I don't recommend, like that to make it show up, or you could like just wrap that up in a class. So might have a class that's like showing, or maybe there's like a hidden, probably a better way to do it, a hidden class that error has by default. Okay, so now it's hidden. Class is hidden, index.css. Am I crazy, or should that be? Oh, it's because I still have the Drupal script. Yeah, right there. So if I get rid of that, all right, now it's hidden. Maybe instead of doing something like that, I do error.classlist remove hidden. And so now, if the name is correct, and I element inspect it, like that's not like that's in the document, but it's tucked away. That could be a way to do it. You could also make the element and append it to the main. That's all right. I think there's probably a little bit more. It's easier to write this. So there are some options with like how you would dynamically display an error. And also you can also imagine there's plenty of other things that we can be doing in this show error handler. So if I also wanted to make the background of the body red, I could also say, all right, give me the body. And set its class list, add an error class to it. And now that happens. So we could do that same thing to like show and hide other elements if you need to. If, for example, we wanted to keep this heading, but we wanted to get rid of the main content, and then we wanted to inject this in with just like making DOM elements or something, we could do that too. Questions about any of that? All right, one last thing I want to show you on this. So that's new pages and messages. Clearing an error. Let's say it's something that the user has an opportunity to correct. For example, what if instead of this favorite Pokemon coming from that, there was like an input. So I have a form over here. It's got a single input. I've got placeholder on it. It's got a name of selected Pokemon. And then it's got a submit button. Okay, so now I've got this this form in here, and maybe I want it. They enter the thing in, and that ends up triggering like all of this. So I need to grab that form. I need to add a submit listener to it. I need to prevent the default behavior. And then and only then I need to do all the rest of this stuff. So I can grab the Pokemon out of the thing with our form data trick. Event target Pokemon name. I'll call it favorite Pokemon. And that's going to be form data dot get Pokemon name, I think. Selected Pokemon. Well, all right. If I have all of that, isn't the rest of this just a matter of putting all that in there? I think so, man. And then that doesn't exist anymore. And that goes back to there. All right. So now this is set up to fire off whenever this gets filled out. So if I do Pikachu, hey, cool. If I do Mewtwo, hey, cool. Now it's like an interactive app. So we just need to figure out what happens when somebody does something super wrong. And so when that error happens, I probably want to do things like grab both of those. And do something like image.source is none, name is none, oops, name.text content is none. All right, so now Mew, oops, lowercase. Okay, there's Mew. If I do Mew, so all that happens. Okay, so the last part of this, though, is I need to clear it. If I fix that, now it's working, but I still have the error message and all of that kind of stuff. So that's usually a good case for another function that just resets everything. So we can just take everything that we're doing here and kind of walk it backwards. The error text content is going to be nothing. The body class list is going to remove the error class. These are going to be whatever comes back from this, so we don't need those anymore. We want to add the hidden class back to that. All right, cool. So all that's clearing the error. So now, as part of this process of the listener, at the very beginning of this, we clear whatever errors we have, and that should undo any of that. So now it's mu. Now it's uh-oh. Now it's fine again. And that, here's error handling in vanilla JavaScript. Ask me some questions about it.
At line 31 where you have the redirect
Uh-huh.
to go to the 404 HTML.
Yeah.
I'm just confused about where that's. Did I miss a section where?
Yeah, that's an alternative. So
Okay, that's what I was thinking that, and I was like, okay, wait, is that somewhere else or is that just okay? That's what I was I'd come to that.
Alternative handler. So if I do
Gotcha.
this, that's fine. If I get it wrong, maybe that's what you want to have happen instead.
Okay.
What else? Keep them coming.
Like it looks easy enough, and it looks like can perfectly follow it. But I know like when I go to do it myself, I'm gonna get lost like halfway through it.
You know what you're gonna do? You're gonna have this video.
I appreciate it.
So the major parts of this to review are if we're giving the user an opportunity to correct a problem, we have to have some way to reset the error. It might happen again. They might get that wrong. Oops, back to, is it show error? Yeah. So that's fine. That's a problem. Maybe I make it worse. Clears, problem again. So I just need to have some way that I can clear that error if I'm giving the user an opportunity to fix it. I generally recommend having like a permanent container to put error messages and stuff. Use CSS to show and hide it and do different stuff like that as needed. But it makes it a lot easier when you're writing these error handlers to just select it, add classes to it, that kind of thing. And then part of showing an error might be removing other things from the page or resetting those or something like that. And then setting these. So like pretty much all the magic for this happens there or there. And sometimes you're in situations where you just want to send them somewhere else. For example, they ask for something that just doesn't exist. Maybe you send them to a 404 instead. Okay, last question's about errors. Going once, going twice. Sold! I hope that was helpful. Oh, as one more reminder too, we also talked about 3 different kinds of errors. This is stuff that'll come in handy throughout your career. And where we need to handle the errors in our code, runtime errors. We have other tools that catch our compile time errors, and logic errors we can pretty much only catch with our brain and tests. So, ta-da! Go make some good apps.